Adesso la parola a Magnus MacFarlane-Barrow, CEO di Mary Meals Obe.
Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. 24 years ago, I had a conversation with a very hungry child. It was a conversation that changed my life and eventually changed the life of millions of others. I suppose that conversation is also the reason why I'm here today. The hungry child I had a conversation with was called Edward. He was 14 years of age, and I met him in a village in Malawi during a time of great hunger. He was 14 years of age, and along with his 5 younger siblings, he was sitting beside his mother, Emma, who was dying. All of them were very obviously malnourished. I asked Edward what his hopes and ambitions were for his life. He looked at me and he said, I'd like to have enough food to eat, and I'd like to be able to go to school one day. That was all of his ambition at 14 years of age. And his words ignited Mary's Meals, a global movement named after Mary, the mother of Jesus, which sets up free school meal programs through which locally produced food is cooked and served by local volunteers to the children of their own communities. Today, more than 2.5 million children eat Mary's Meals each school day in 16 of the world's poorest countries. We who are involved in this mission all over the world, from those who make donations to those who give their time freely to this work, we like to describe ourselves as servants of hope. We consistently see that the promise of this meal draws children into school, often for the first time, and keeps them there. On average, school enrolment increases by 25% after the introduction of the meals. As we speak, 71 million children like Edward are currently missing primary school because of poverty and hunger. They're being robbed of their future, their physical growth often permanently stunted, and their lack of education condemning them and their children to a life of poverty. In the last few years, after decades of progress, child hunger is on the rise in too many places across the world, driven by conflict, extreme weather, economic shocks, and the fact that many of the wealthiest nations in the world are reducing their aid budgets. Recently, I visited Tigray in Ethiopia, where all these factors have combined to cause a terrible hunger crisis, which has taken the lives of many children and forced hundreds of thousands to drop out of school. I spoke to a teacher in an empty school who told me that when there are no children left in the playground, there can be no hope left either. Maybe hope should be another right for every child. In the previous panel, we discussed the child's right to education. We can see clearly that for the poorest children, the right to food and the right to education are intrinsically linked, and that school meals can uphold both of these fundamental rights, and other important rights too. How many children in the world are being trafficked or their parents forced to make dangerous journeys across borders simply because they can't feed their children or enable their education? I believe that every child has a right to a daily meal in their place of education, and I believe that there's no good reason why we can't make and keep this promise to the world's poorest children. We have in the human family more than enough resource to do this. We in this room could make it happen. Today, it costs us on average $25 to serve one child with meals for a whole school year. To serve every child who is currently without school meals in the world's lowest income countries would cost just over $3 billion per year. In the UK alone, we spend 3 times that amount each year on our pet dogs. I've nothing against dogs, but this for me is a cause of great shame. This isn't about what's possible, it's about what we choose to make our priority. And school meal programs don't need to remain reliant on outside aid forever. In fact, By supporting the emergence of an educated young workforce, they play a key part in setting communities free from dependence on aid and creating economies that can eventually support their own provision of school meals. One of the best things about getting older now is to meet many young adults in countries like Malawi and Liberia who say, you know, without the meals, I never would have gone to school. I might not even be alive today. And they're in paid employment, or they've started businesses, or improved their family farms, simply because they can read and write and they're healthy. Wouldn't it be wonderful in this year of Jubilee if we accepted the invitation to be pilgrims of hope by making a promise to every child of a daily meal in their place of education? There could be no better way to help the world's poorest communities escape poverty, and no better way to uphold the right to hope for every child. Thank you.
Grazie.